Shalom and welcome to you all. I'm talking to you here from our shop in the Old City, the center of the universe. I believe that what you'll see happening here with the whole confusion about the elections and what will be, that's also a mirror of what's going on in the world. And Jerusalem is a mirror. And watch what happens in Jerusalem. You'll get a sense of where things are heading in the world. But I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about on Wednesday night and Thursday, we're celebrating, the wrong word is celebrating, we're commemorating the Holocaust Remembrance Day. And it's a very powerful time in this country that was created by people who came out of the ovens of Auschwitz, out of the forests of Babi Yar, about people who had nothing and created something. And I think there's much to learn from them, much to learn about that holiday, and much to learn about this week's Torah portion, which relates to it as well. This week's Torah portion is Parshat Shmini, and in it we hear about two of Aaron's sons. But let's wait and go step by step. On Thursday, on Yom HaShoah, sirens are going to be blasting throughout this country at a specific time, usually 11 o'clock. I'm not sure what it'll be this time. And when those sirens are blasted in every village, on every highway, everywhere, people just stop. They freeze. Young children with their knapsacks going to school, people carrying stuff to somewhere else, everybody stops. Buses on the highways, cars just stop. People get out of their cars and stand by their car for 2 minutes while the siren is going. It's a powerful and eloquent, silent memory. And it is one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in this country, where people, no matter what their age, no matter where they come from, stand together, not looking at each other, just closing their eyes and standing and reminding or telling those souls up in heaven, you have not been forgotten. We are stopping our lives so that you know that you are not forgotten. There are some people who find that that's sort of a very foreign and alien way to do it, so they read Psalms instead. There's some that want to show their independence and won't. 95% of this country stands in silence. And that reminds us of what we read in this week's Torah portion. They're preparing for this experience of God's glory to appear, and it comes as a fire and burns the sacrifices that they prepared, burns it up in a fire of holiness and passion. And two of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, were so taken up by that experience of holiness, they wanted to do more. They brought another fire. They wanted a fire of their own to bring. They wanted to give themselves up in fire. And the Bible tells us it's a strange fire, zara, but really came from a deep place of piety. Later on we find out that Hashem says about them that through them that are nigh unto me I will be sanctified, and before all people I will be glorified. Meaning Hashem thinks of these two young men as being holy, who wanted to give everything, including their soul, back up to Hashem. But they died. Aaron lost two of his sons. And so as we read, Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, took each of them his censer and put fire in them, laid incense thereon, offered strange fire before Hashem, which he had not commanded them. And there came forth fire from before Hashem and devoured them, and they died before Hashem. It filled them up, and they simply gave up their lives. And Moshe says to Aaron, this is what Hashem spoke, through them that are close to me I will be sanctified. What did Aaron do? Vayidom Aaron. Silence. What's he going to say? We see another story in the Midrash. Rabbi Yehuda tells the name of Rabbi. When Moshe ascended to receive the Torah, he saw that Hashem was telling him to write letters in such a way that there were crowns and letters. He goes, what is this about? He said, you'll see, there will be a time where people will expound on each missing crown or each missing note. And he sends him in a vision to see a Rabbi Akiva who's standing before his crowds and expounding on the Torah and even expounding on each little note and tag. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, Hashem, such a great man, such a wise man, why didn't you give the Torah through him? Why are you giving it through me? I'm nothing. Hashem says to him, be silent. This is what I have decided or has come to my mind. Moshe responded, fine, okay, but this is his Torah. What was his reward for such Torah? And Hashem shows him later that Rabbi Akiva gets martyred by the Romans. They tie him up and comb his flesh with steel combs until he dies. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem, this is Torah and this is its reward? And Hashem says again, silence. This is what I have decided. We live in a world where there's an explanation for everything, a solution for every problem we think. Living in this world, though, in this part of the world, we realize that axiom is not true. Everything that we are in this country, everything that we live, the experience of being in this land, teaches us that it defies our logic. Our continued existence here is beyond comprehension. Our survival makes no sense. Moshe was told to be silent because in his silence, maybe he would begin to understand. Aaron, the only way he knew to cope and comprehend this horrific death of his two sons, he needed to do with silence. Elijah is taught the same thing. God is heard in the quietude of the still, silent voice. Kol Damama Daka. We read in 1 Kings 19. And he said, go forth and stand upon the mount before Hashem. And behold, Hashem passed by in a great and strong wind, rent the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before Hashem. But Hashem was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but Hashem was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but Hashem was not in the fire. After the fire, Kol Damama Daka. Silence. We're probably never going to be able to understand the slaughter of innocent men, women, and children. But it could be that in the midst of all that pain, that moment of silence where we stand listening to that siren, some measure of comprehension of the enormity of how this world works that we don't really understand may give some type of comfort, may give some type of deeper understanding. When the Jews marched out of Treblinka, they marched out of Auschwitz. Many of them ended up on the shores of Israel. And the British government at that time kicked them back out, sent them back into the oceans, sent them to countries that wouldn't accept them. And some of the boats that tried to get back, tried to get to certain countries, drowned in the sea. And yet nothing stopped them from moving forward. They accepted whatever occurred in their world, and they just went forward. And when they created the state, suddenly they came at us from all parts of the Arab nations, came to destroy them, throw us into the sea, and they continued to fight. People who never raised a gun, people who had always been on the other side of a rifle in the concentration camp, simply were holding this rifle and firing back because they knew they needed to do that. They came out of the graveyards of Europe with nothing, with many reactions. Two stories, and with that I'll end. Years ago, many years ago, right after the Shoah, one of the great Hasidic rabbis, called the Beit Israel or Beis Israel, was in his house of study, and a woman came bursting into the place, screaming, the hair disheveled, ranting and raving and speaking against God. I hate you, God, she said. I hate you. You killed my father, you killed my mother, you killed my brothers and sisters. I hate you. The Hasidim in the room wanted to pick the woman up and throw her out. the Beis Yisrael hit his hand on the table and said, don't touch that woman. That woman has more faith in her little finger than all of you combined. You don't hate so much if you didn't love so much and felt betrayed. And our understanding is that Hashem cried with that woman. Her lack of faith was an incredible act of faith. The second story was of a friend of mine whose father went through all the camps. And I remember going to the wedding of the son of this friend of mine. And all of a sudden, I saw the cameraman wasn't there, and I saw that my friend was dancing with his father and the chatan, the groom. And I started taking pictures. And at a certain point, I still have that picture. At a certain point, the father turned to me, picked up his hand smiling, and showed me the concentration camp numbers on his arm as they were dancing, as if saying, I am the victory. I am the proof that there is a God. Look, I have children, grandchildren, followers of Torah, lovers of Israel, and they're all here. And this concentration camp number is a lie, because I am who I am, the grandfather of this new groom, and we continue to live. So in the midst of that silence, in the midst of Aaron's silence, and Moses' silence, and our silence during that siren, in the midst of all of that, may we find some comfort in that despite the horrific experience, we've come out and created everything you see around us. Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel, live and are a testament that there is a God, there is a purpose, and there is a destiny. As Shabbat Shalom, and we will speak to you, God willing, next week. Thank you for joining us on YouTube, here on our website. Thank you for supporting us through your purchases, but thank you for just being with us. And we await you. We've already had a couple of visitors to the shop, people that somehow got into Israel and are here. Thank you, and lehitraot, Shabbat Shalom.